Testing 1 2, testing 1 2. Testing 1 2, test. All right. Told you guys a little while ago that I was going to be back in an hour. It was probably a couple minutes more than that, but you know, it is what it is because I actually got behind because I was setting this up. But the one thing that I was asked before, and while I'm doing that, I want to do something real quick because I had someone ask if it actually does it. There we go. Of how they could do certain things. Because they would ask me about a show, and in the context of that show, I want to see if I can find it now. It's not that one. So give me a hot second because I want to see something. Because I literally found it a little while ago. And I was going to do, might actually just need to wait until tomorrow. Social media. Was it that one? No, it's not that one. Give me a half a second because it was definitely a valid question, and I actually appreciate the question. Oh, no, it was not. Not that. Yeah, give me a half a second because I want to do this real quick because, like I said, it was a very good question that was asked. And of course, because I'm looking for it, I can't find it. And it actually dealt with this episode. So give me a hot second. Oh, let me see something. It has a search button. Let's see if the search. All right. I wanted to show this because I can't, well, right now I can't find it. Anyway, I was asked specifically, what are some of the things you get if you sponsor the show? And part of that is going to be a little button right up in this area here, in which will say sponsor the show and whatever. So that's one of the things you get. You get your name, get the sponsor, get the actual whole show in its entirety. Everybody get to see all your good looking stuff from that. But that's part of what you're going to get if you sponsor a show. But the second part of it is this. Step out of your car, the law of Mimms and Wilson. because this is actually a question that was brought up to me via from a young man, and I want to say he asked this question probably about 6 months ago. And I told him, I said, I'll go ahead and do a video on it. But he was asking, again, because this is why I like for people to pretty much get on the phone with me, because he gave me context. Because he was asking for someone else in regards to the passenger's responsibility as far as Pennsylvania v. Mimms. Now, what we're going to do is basically have him, he's technically the sponsor of this show, and we're going to answer his question. And the first part of this is your rights during the traffic stop and the balance between officer safety and individual liberty. Because if you watched the last live that I did just a little while ago, one thing I spoke about that was a constant in the court's decisions is individual liberty. These things are paramount in all court decisions, because if it's pretty much set up properly, your case will go in accordance to actual law. If it's set up properly, which means you're tying the judge down, you're tying the prosecutor down, you're actually making them do the job that they're supposed to do, because you're doing the job of a vigorous defense, which you're supposed to do, which is why they hate actual good lawyers. But anyway, we're going to cover the Supreme Court rulings that shape police authority during traffic stops, Pennsylvania v. Mimms and Maryland v. Wilson. Now, the Fourth Amendment basically states protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. This includes traffic stops, because when you're on your road, you have the right of locomotion. A lot of people are like, I have the right to travel. It doesn't mean what y'all think it means. You have the right to locomotion. Your right to travel is your ability to actually move from one state to the next. That's the right to travel. Right to locomotion is you being in a conveyance, moving about and doing what it is that you're supposed to do without injuring others. That's the difference. Now, a traffic stop is a seizure under the Fourth Amendment. Now, the base or the balancing test in this, because again, we spoke about Brown v. Texas. This is how all of this stuff ties together, because a lot of people, well, you don't know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, I'm just giving it to you in spoons. Now we're sitting down, we're eating the meal now. The balancing test, again, from Brown v. Texas, individual privacy versus legitimate government interests, officer safety, and crime prevention. Because these things, while they are separate, they are actually together, and unfortunately, they are not equal. Always remember that. They are not equal. But that's because we don't fight back and we don't force them to make it equal. Now, the highlight of the reality is traffic stops are some of the most dangerous situations for police officers. Yet, I'll go into that later. That's a different thing. But most cite statistics of assaults on officers during stops. Now, what those statistics are not going to tell you is the officer escalating during those stops. Because just like I love to give the story, or multiple stories, of my buddy who's now retired. His name is John. He worked in Atlanta as a police officer. John, I went on a ride along with John, I think twice. And both times was after he had been shot twice. And I asked him, why aren't you aggressive like the rest of these cops? And why don't you grab your gun? Your hand is never on your gun whenever you're making these traffic stops. And again, because it's supposed to be the most dangerous situation for a cop. He never had his hand on his gun. He was never aggressive unless the person that he was speaking to escalated. And I asked him, why would you not? If you shoot me twice, the third time is definitely my fault, because I'm not going to have it happen a third time. But his response was so human it explained to me and showed me why he rode by himself. He was an actual good cop because he looked at everybody he stopped as his daughter, his son, his brother, his sister, his mom, his uncle, his auntie, his grandma. He looked at them as a human being and as family. So he looked at it as, how would I want my family to be treated if they're stopped by another police officer? And again, things happen. He understands that. Happenstance is life. Because there is a marker where everybody thinks every cop is a horrible cop. And if you roll the dice, you're probably not going to miss very often. But when you're looking at situations like this, these are the things in which we're talking about. While it's a dangerous situation, they understand that when they sign up and request the job, they volunteer to go to training for that job. So they understand this going in. But it's what they do once they become a police officer is what separates them. And even with me, I've actually used the word coward. Because we're either training cowards or killers. And if you think that everybody that you come encounter with or come in contact with is out to hurt you, you are a coward. They are training you to be a coward. And there is no other word for it. You can figure out, as a matter of fact, you can grab a thesaurus and do what you like. Whatever word makes you comfortable. My life, my understanding, if everyone scares you, you are a coward. You're Chicken George. You're the little chicken that's on the cartoons. He's scared of everything. That's what I look at if that's how you are as a police officer. And even, I've given this story once before as well. My youngest son now, at the time he was maybe 3 years old. And we were walking downtown at a parade, and it was me, him, and two of my nieces. And he saw this group of 3 police officers. Well, he immediately clinched up and goes, "Oh, there's a police officers." It made me snap immediately. They were like, "Don't pass go, don't do it." I grabbed him by his shirt and I walked him over to the police officer. I said, "Touch him. Just touch him." So my son reached out and touched him on the leg. And I got down to his level. That was before the bad knees and getting old. But I looked him in his eye. I said, "Don't you ever be afraid of another man because he's human just like you. Now, don't give him a reason to talk to you." And we got up and walked away. Now, here's where the separation is. The separation from good cop and bad cops. I realized what I had done. Like, oh shit, I got him out here just touching people. That's what went through my mind. So I turned back around and I said, I apologize, but I don't want him afraid of y'all, because if he's afraid of y'all, y'all will mess around and hurt him because of his fear. The two of the cops were like, "We understand. We don't want him afraid of us, because if he is afraid of us, he will attempt to hurt us. So we appreciate you telling him not to fear us." So I reach my hand out, shake one hand, shake two hands. The third cop sticks his hands in his pocket, said, "I don't shake hands." And I told him, I said, "If your job is to deal with the public and your interaction is that, you don't need to put that uniform on. Matter of fact, you either need to go home and do what you need to do with your gun, or don't put it back on, because this job is for brave people." One of the other cops that did shake my hand started laughing and said, "I literally told him that yesterday." Because the bad cop is the one that is scared, and the bad cop is the one that will hurt you. These are the things that I constantly tell you, because this is why those type of police officers don't need to be wearing a uniform. And I don't mind if I hurt your feelings, because that's your idea. If that's your ideology, that is your business. However, that does not change the fact that your actions base my understanding of who you are and what it is that you are and the threat that you pose to me. Now, when you're talking about Pennsylvania v. Mimms, right? I'm going to give you a little bit of background as we go into it. Mimms was pulled over for expired license plate. He was ordered out of the car. Now, the officer saw a bulge in the jacket, found a gun. Now, the issue was ordering Mimms out of the car. Was it a violation of the Fourth Amendment? At the time, and what is this? 1977. That's when this was in question. There was no real determination if the ordering out of the car was a violation because, again, he was stopped for an expired license plate. License plate has nothing to do with him getting out the car unless you're going to see that if your license plate is expired or not. So the ruling was there was no violation. However, because there was minimal intrusion, asking the driver to step out, a huge state interest was officer safety. Now, the officers may order someone out of a car during a traffic stop as a matter of course. No extra suspicion is required. Now, understand what that means. I want you to understand what that means. An officer may order a driver out of the car during a traffic stop as a matter of course. In the context of it, if the officer can articulate an ongoing threat to their safety that is posed by the driver sitting in the car, that is why they could ask you to get out. Because even if they're arguing with you, they still must articulate what was the threat which made you request the driver to get out of the car or the truck or the conveyance, whatever it is that they're asking you to get out of. There must be an issue of a continued threat, and the officer must be able to articulate that threat. And even in Pennsylvania v. Mimms, once pulled out the car, the driver loses the right to refuse to exit. Once you get out, you lose the right to refuse to exit. But you also are subjected to plain view, which is why I always tell everybody, close the door, because I've kicked the door closed a couple of times. I've actually even thrown my keys because I actually had stuff in the car, but that's a whole nother story. But I recommend close the door, because if they open the door, absent exigent circumstances, which again, I got a video for that too, that's coming. It is a violation, and anything they find is illegal. But once you're out the car, you're also not obligated for a search. They must articulate the area in which they feel there is a dangerous object. They can't just pat you down unless you consent. They must point to the area. Point that it's right there. It's right there. That's what's that right there. They can't grab your pocket and say, what's in your pocket? No. The pat down is a search. I've actually explained that in law. So if they're just touching you, they can't do that, because now anything they find is subject to suppression, because the law states there must be something there that they can articulate. And if they can't do it, it is a violation of the individual liberty. Since that seems to be the word for the day. Individual liberty. And also with the plain view doctrine, you understand, if contraband is found in plain view, it can be seized. Now, I'm going to give you some, I'm going to jump into something and I'm going to jump back, because I've been watching also, they'll ask, do you have a weapon in the car? You are not obligated to answer unless. See, there are caveats to it. Not obligated to answer unless. I'll get into that. But at the same time, let's say you get out the car, you have a concealed carry, and it's on the seat. The officer is not then allowed to go into your conveyance and seize that weapon unless that is the reason they were stopping you in the first beginning. Because if you actually remember the video I did, I want to say about a year ago, Officer Blake Simmons down in Frisco. Officer Johnson said, oh, he does this all the time. He ended a traffic stop. He then held the young man longer than he should have. And then he went into the car without a warrant, without consent, went into the trunk. He then went into a case. Again, all of this without consent. He then searched the number of a weapon that he was told that was in the car in violation of law. Always understand that. And again, what did Officer Johnson say? He does this all the time. This is why anytime if you're stopped by Blake Simmons in Frisco or wherever he's at now, because he actually left as soon as the lawsuit was filed, challenge it, because he's still a police officer here in Texas. Because even if he took a break, the lawsuit still it's waiting on you, player. But understand, the second he resurfaces or he's served, he's cooked because he's being sued in his individual capacity. And absolutely understand, this is a violation of law. This is, again, not my opinion. I'm showing you the Supreme Court cases. I'm talking about it right now. I'm actually giving you everything that you need. Well, not everything. I'm giving you the guidelines and showing you that there is an avenue for you to fight back. And as long as you're accepting it, whatever outcome comes of it is on you, because it's up to you to fight and make sure your rights are respected. Now, this case tilted the balance toward officer safety over individual inconvenience. Notice I didn't use liberty this time, because again, what we talked about with the roadblocks, if it's a minute inconvenience, it's all right. Sitting there at that roadblock, if they're not checking your ID, if they're not checking your registration, we're cool. But anything outside that, it is now an issue of individual liberty, and it's a violation. This isn't asking you to get out the car. Now, when we go into Maryland v. Wilson, which again came up, 20 years later in 1997, let me make sure, yes, 1997, Wilson was a passenger in a stopped car for speeding. Wilson was in a car that was stopped for speeding. Officers ordered all passengers out. Drugs fell out of Wilson's lap. Now, does Mimms extend to passengers? Because of Maryland v. Wilson, Mimms extends to passengers. Because again, police officers must articulate the ongoing threat to their safety in which they ask for the passengers to be taken out of a vehicle, conveyance, truck, whatever name you want to use, right? So does it apply to passengers? In a context, yes, because originally, 20 years prior, hell, the year prior, it did not. It was only for the driver. 1997 said, yes, it affects the passenger because, again, it's prioritizing officer safety. However, the officer must illustrate an ongoing threat to their safety. If they're unable to do that, asking someone to get out is now not lawful. Not illegal, but it's not lawful. It is going into the individual liberty aspects. The court's reasons, passengers present some potential threats as the driver. Similar to the driver in the context of if there's multiple people, so let's say in the context of John. John makes a stop, John drives by himself, so he has to call in backup. Prior to backup coming, John is still approaching this vehicle. So once he gets there, John is by himself. If there's 4 people in the car, John is outnumbered. Even if John has a vest, a gun, a taser, and a baton, and 3 donkeys, he's outnumbered. Understand this. So there's a potential threat. Can he do something to? Absolutely. But here's the next part of that. It's also safer for all of them to remain in the car if John is by himself. I'm going to say that one more time. It's safer for all of them to remain in the conveyance if John is by himself and he waits for backup, which is one of the police duties. Oh, Richard, how do you know that? Do you think I'm just going to be talking without doing some active research on understanding what police procedures are? Because not only do I understand what they can do, I understand what they can't do. I understand what they're not supposed to be doing. I actually understand their playbook as it's written. Now, there are, again, from state to state, county to county, it changes. They're very minute. Just like statutes, codes, and orders change from state to state, county to county. Why? Because there are different issues that must be addressed. That does not change overall procedure. Now, passengers may also be ordered out of the vehicle without individualized suspicion. Just what I spoke about. If there are multiple passengers in there, the actual number of passengers cause an issue for safety. Because it can be 1 police officer, it can be 2 police officers. And they might be outnumbered by the number of people from the driver to the passenger. So if the driver is a threat, does not mean the passengers are. However, they are placing everyone else in a higher threat level because it's more than that's available to police them. Okay. And what's up, Blunt Twins? And what's up, Blue Sky? I'm glad you guys stopped in. Now, important distinction. Passengers are seized during traffic stop. This was set up, again, by Marilyn B. Wilson, but it was reinforced by Berlin v. California in 2007. Still, officers may control movements for safety. Now, this is one of the reasons why they'll generally say, hey, do you mind sitting on the curb for me? Do you mind sitting? Why? Because it's more difficult for you, even if you're young and spry, for you to do an upward motion to then run versus you actually standing and already in a sprinter's stance. And any of the other things, you can be quick draw. It's more difficult from a seated position, which is why they ask that. Or they say, oh, well, come over this way, because again, if they're taking you away from the car. Now, here's the benefit from that. If they take you more than 8 feet or even arm's reach, once you're out of arm's reach of your conveyance or vehicle or whatever, you are now in the realm of consent or search warrant, because there are no more exigent circumstances available because you can't destroy evidence. Uh-oh, I just said something for you. So if you didn't pay attention, if you are more than 8 feet or arm's reach outside your conveyance, the police officers no longer can use the term of exigent circumstances because you can't destroy any evidence. They must get a search warrant. And if they search your conveyance while you are handcuffed, while you are more than arm's reach away from the vehicle, you can have that evidence suppressed because there are no more exigent circumstances available to that officer. Right? Which is why they often try to get you to leave your door open. I'm throwing that out there because I want you to understanding of the police practices. And it's not just, oh, well, they just do that in Texas. Nope, they do that in Georgia, do that in South Carolina, do that in Virginia, do that in New York, do that in California, do that Arizona. Like I haven't seen a place they don't do it. Maybe in Maine. I haven't been to Maine, so maybe they don't do it in Maine. Anyway, The reasons that allow the result or the request legally. Routine safety. Again, just gave you the examples of it. Being outnumbered. Actually, if the driver is a threat, the passengers then be, birds of a feather. Officer suspicion. If here's the one they use the most often. If the officer sees nervous behavior. Now they use the fact that you're irritated as nervous behavior. Oh, he was furtive. I actually had an officer use that with me one day, and I cracked up laughing. And he goes, "Why?" Because he was actually getting ready to search my car. And I said, "Why would I be nervous?" I said, "Dude, I just beat 108 counts. I'm not worrying about your stupidity." And I said, "Before you do that, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you understand behavioral evidence?" He goes, "Yes." I said, "I'm glad." I said, because behavior evidence shows I've never consented to a search in my entire life, ever. So if you're going in there without a warrant, automatically, because my name is on the docket that you're going to use, you have lost the fact of consent. So now you got to make up a lie, because I'm going to get that video. And if you don't have that video, you're going to have to explain in federal court why that video is not available. And I need you to find something. The sad part was I actually had stuff in the car, and I hope to God he didn't find it, which he didn't, because he stopped. Because again, you may say he's just talking, but something clicked like, okay, he's not speaking regular. He's not talking like these other bastards. I know my rights. Because I will just give you another example too, because I want you to stop saying certain stuff. Because just like I told you about how to properly invoke, I don't answer questions. That's not it. But I was standing. I used to play a basketball game called the Officers Game. I didn't even realize why it was called the Officers Game. Now, I found out at the literally 8 months in that everybody there were police officers. I didn't know. Just playing ball for me. And what happened was, there was a guy, he came in and we were talking, and he was like, "Yeah, I said, I know my rights. They put me in cuffs." And I cracked up laughing. I said, "Hold on." I said, "I want you to do something." I said, "I want you to pay attention to something." I yelled out, I said, "What is the one thing that someone says to you that before you arrest them that they in fact don't know?" All of them yelled out in damn near unison, "I know my rights." Because the second you do that, they know you don't. They know, because again, I've never yelled out, "Oh, I know my rights." But you know what I didn't often end up in? Handcuffs. Why? Because just a question. I'm gonna throw another question out to you. Why would, if I'm gonna get biblical for a hot second, because I want you to understand context. Why would someone ask Samson, "Where does your strength come from?" if he's this picturesque, Hulkalian Amazon like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lou Ferrigno, or Samson, and all these other huge muscular dudes, right? If you see a dude with 22-inch pythons, you're not going to ask him where he get his strength from. Right? Because apparently he doesn't look like he's strong. That's why they're asking where's his strength, because he doesn't look strong. Nobody ever asked me, "I didn't realize you was 300 pounds. They can see that I'm 300. I never had to tell anybody I'm 300 pounds. They got vision. They can see I'm 300 pounds. Whenever I'm speaking, I don't have to tell you I know my rights, because I'm explaining to you what you're doing wrong. I don't have to tell you that, because the second I have to tell you that, that means I don't have it. Because it's not obvious. Because even most time when I do that, I actually shut up. I give them what they need to get, and I shut up. Because now if they run my name, it's like, oh shit. Now how much of an asshole is he gonna be? Now I want you to get down there because I actually went to the jail one night. And it was the funniest shit to me. I was stopped, and the guy told, basically, I'm not doing it. I said, I got time tonight, so I'm not giving you anything. Well, I gotta take you down the fingerprints. I said, well, if that's what you think you can do, by all means. So I get down there, and the chief asked the guy, well, he wouldn't ID. Say, well, what would you investigate? Well, we were talking to him because of some BS. He said, well, he doesn't have the ID. He said, well, we gonna fingerprint him anyway. Chief's like, that's not a great idea. So he turns around and looks at me, and I'm laughing. And the cop goes, well, what you laughing at? What you think so funny? I said, you have to get a warrant for my fingerprints. He goes, no, I don't. I said, yes, you do, because I'm giving them to you consensually. I said, and then your boss knows, with him standing there, if you fingerprint me without consent and without a crime, that also gives you an obligation for a warrant for my fingerprints, I'm tapping his pockets too. His sergeant goes, was he driving? He said, no. He said, then take him back to where you got him from. Why? Because by taking me back, that actually negates the kidnapping charge. And on the way back, I was very talkative. Wasn't in cuffs. I was just chilling in the backseat. I was actually laid sideways. Because, one, I'm 6'4". I don't fit in the backseat of a damn car comfortably at all. But at the same time, I told him, I said, here's the problem with what you're doing. I said, I know you've done this before. And I said, the thing is, you're going to run across an asshole that calls me. And I'm going to take your post certifications. I'm going to take everything you believe you love. Because you are showing incompetence. And I said, and here's the crazier part. Mississippi v. Davis was also reiterated in the circuit court for Texas. So your incompetence actually goes straight into clearly established law. So you may want to tell your sergeant that you need to be retrained, because you can't just grab somebody and expect something from them, because I'm not a police officer. And if I was a complete asshole and had time, I would sue the dog shit out of you and take your certification. And he was just as quiet. He apologized like 30 times. And I got out of the car and finished going to the house. But again, I didn't want to sacrifice any time on this idiot. But I do know for a fact I made a phone call. And I'm pretty sure, I'm not even sure if he's a cop here anymore after that anyway. Because I don't think 90% of police, because this is actually one of the places where there's the longest police academy in the country, which is why this is one of the safest places in the country. And at the same time, I don't think most of these bastards actually know what they're doing. They're just following orders. Because the cock out trickles from the top down. But understanding this, going through this, they're going to use tactics of your movement and your behavior. Now, what they can ask is if they are noticing a bulge. Because again, they have to point to the dangerous area. That's what makes it legal. Now, the furtive movements, that's just something they say because every movement is furtive. But again, understanding context. They're going to say things that don't make any sense, but it's used as a tactic to get you to do or say something that is not necessarily in your best interest. Now, the controlling of the scene, that is the reason why they ask you to sit down, because they reduce the risk of surprise attacks. Because like I said, if you're standing, it's easier for you to get here. Bye-bye. And also, you can quick draw if you're standing. It's more difficult. It gives them at least a second to react if someone's getting up off the ground. So you cannot technically refuse to exit if ordered during a lawful traffic stop. See all these caveats, right? Refusal may escalate and lead to an arrest. May. Now, but it doesn't automatically justify a search. Officers still need probable cause or consent for a search. That is the one thing that is always necessary. Now, the modern challenges, and I'm going to add a little color and commentary for you, right? This, a lot of times, is looked at as an erosion of personal liberty. Because police technically don't need a real reason to ask you to out of the vehicle, right? They technically don't. But if they're asking you out, it must be in regards to their safety, and they must be able to articulate what it is that they see as a threat to their safety. Now, when those questions start getting asked, you're going to start seeing a bunch of different things that you're not going to like. I just want you to understand that. Now, the risk of pretextual stops being used for harassment. This again goes to the stop and frisk, because they'll stop you and ask you to get out the car just because. I've actually been subjugated to this a couple of times, even with the red dogs, and I hate to say it, because at that time I was doing wrong. So I was stopped. I didn't care, but, because even with me, I learned early, because I did it one time. I took off running from the police, and then I ended up going to jail that night with an ass whooping, and I was dirty, and I was tired. So, yeah, I didn't run anymore. So I learned a different way to handle my business. But anyway, understanding this and disproportionate impact on minority drivers. Now, the reason why this is because there's a disproportionate impact on arrest in minority areas. There's also a disproportionate arresting of those in lower income areas. So while it's still a fact, it is still one of those that you understand as this is going on, and these are the people that are being attacked and affected the most by this. Now, I'm closing with this. Know your rights. You can be ordered out the car if there's a continuing threat to an officer's safety. Officer must be able to articulate that. Now, but you do not or are not automatically subjugated to be searched. Officer still has an obligation of being able to point to the area in which they feel the danger can or is coming from. The law prioritizes officer safety in the Pennsylvania v. Mimms rule and the Maryland v. Wilson rule. However, officer still has obligations in both of these rulings of being able to point out and name where their threat is coming from and their reasoning. But at the same time, it also takes away exigent circumstances to which they need a warrant to search. Always understand that, because you can't destroy evidence if you are in handcuffs or you are away more than arm's length from the vehicle. Now, Mimms and Wilson are about power and safety. Understanding them helps you navigate encounters with police wisely. Because at the end of the day, invoke. Due to the advice of counsel and the Fifth Amendment protections, I choose not to answer this or any other questions. You can also, if they're going to continue to say, that's great. I just told you that my counsel has advised me. Would you like for my counsel to come here so you can continue asking these questions? And again, these are things that you have the power, Because even now you can ask, what was it that allowed you or made you believe that there was a threat to your safety? Because then they have to answer those questions. Why? Because they are amenable to you at all. I just went back into the trust issue, didn't I? It's not just Drake that got trust issues. The police do. Because they are amenable to you at all times. If they're choosing not to, go get a sergeant when you request one, which is, I don't know why you would do that, but if they don't do it, they're not being amenable because they are fiduciaries of the trust. They must do what you're asking at all times. They must be amenable to you at all times because of their oath. And if they do not, and you can show that, then you have a violation which you can then be compensated for. And you have more grounds other than 42 USC 1983. So thank you guys. And who knows, I'm actually, because my neighbor bought me something to eat. I appreciate that, but I don't eat most of the stuff that they brought. But I appreciate that because they know I'm up here by myself, so I'm not sitting up here just cooking. Because hell, I'm about to go get on some of this food they brought, and I'm gonna get on this yak. I might get back on here once or twice more tonight. So I love you guys. I appreciate y'all stopping in. And Supreme, I'm out for now. Don't forget to join the channel. Don't forget to join the masterclass. The more videos are coming because I actually have more than I thought I did. But also, if you need to contact me, my email is in it's in the chat, as well as it's in the chat and it's also in the description. And if you're looking to get help with your case, to win your case, consultations are under Calendarly. It's in the description. Click the link, set up a time, and make sure you leave your phone number so I can get in contact with you. And we can go from there. Let's keep going. Let's keep growing. And see you later.